Praise the Lord, my beautiful blessed souls. We are bruised and not broken. I am back with another word. We are in this, we're ending off chapter 24, Joshua chapter 24. I am at work. Yes, forgive the kid. But anyway, I gotta do what I gotta do. I gotta make these donuts and these coins, okay? So anyway, this is what we're doing. Going into the finale. We already did it, but I want to go into the gods and what was going on. So, Joshua chapter 24, this is a summary. We're going to look at what happened when it came to the gods and then moving forward and what type of gods they were, what they were serving, and what was going on. So, this is overview, the farewell speech. Choose who you will serve this day, the covenant with God or the gods of, at the time, the Canaanites, which was the Egyptian gods and different ones. So, Joshua gathered them, God called Abraham and led the descendants. He delivered Israel from slavery in Egypt. He protected them in the wilderness. He gave them victory over the enemies. He provided the promised land. So the emphasis on this is God's faithfulness and provision. It says, choose this day whom you will serve. Verses 14 to 15. Joshua challenged the people to put away false gods, serve the Lord sincerely. Famous verse was, Joshua 24:15. Israel's response, the people declare they will serve no other gods, and they will serve the Lord because he saved them. Joshua warns them, God is holy and jealous. They must be sincere and faithful. The people reaffirm their commitment. The covenant is renewed. Joshua makes covenant with the people, writes the words in the book of the law, sets up the large stone as witness. Remember, the final event, Joshua dies at 110. He's buried in the land that he inherited. The bones of Joseph are also buried there. And Eleazar the priest also dies. So, faithfulness of God. God keeps his promises over generations. Choice and commitment. Serving God is a deliberate decision. Rejecting idols, loyalty must be exclusive to God. Legacy of leadership. Joshua ends strong, pointing the people to God. Why? This is where we are. So, now fear the Lord and serve him with faithfulness. Joshua 24:14. So now we're going to get into what happened. Because, hold on. Let me go down. Okay. Ooh, hold on. Okay. So he said, choose his day, but notice Joshua doesn't force the people. He gives them a choice, right? Because God gives us choices. We don't have to, we're going to see how it plays out. So we're going to look at it. We are not alone in questioning. We're going to look at questioning. Why? Because I like to question. I question some of it. Right now, I am definitely going to be questioning these guys, what happened. So sometimes we get to questioning, feeling disappointed, feeling far too going spiritually. We're tired and we don't have any answers. So this is where we are. We're trying to figure out, because this is where they are. We're trying to find out what's going on. So we're going to sit with this and we're going to look. So who were the gods? This is what I want to know. So it mentions three main groups. So it's groups of gods, different type of gods in Joshua. So gods of the ancestors, these Mesopotamian ones. Now these ancestors serve other gods beyond the Euphrates. These were the gods like Terah, the household gods Abraham's father used to serve. These were who? Hold on. The Babylonian region. So we're going to look these up. Because remember, God took Abraham from his father's house, and this is why. So Abraham, his father's name was Terah. And Terah was serving these other gods. And these are the Babylonian and Mesopotamian. So we're going to look them up and see and what that looks like. So this was Sin, the moon god, Sin. Marduk, chief god of Babylon. So we're going to look them up. We want to see what these look like. And Marduk, okay, is the chief god of Babylon. And remember, God destroyed Babylon. We always hear about Babylon. Even Abraham's family started with idolatry before God called him. So remember, they were already doing this. So the gods of Egypt, this is the second set. So these are the Mesopotamians. These are different sets. And that's why we see different gods all over the place, because this is what this is all about. Two, these were the Egyptian gods. With a second set. These were, while Israel was enslaved in Egypt, they were surrounded by these guys. These are the ones. Ra, R-A, the sun god. That's a different name. Sin was the moon god in Mesopotamia. So Ra, sun god. Then we had Osiris, the god of the dead. I'm writing them down because I have to go back. I want to see what they look. Isis, Horus, etc. So remember, we've seen and heard these names before. So this is not like something we haven't heard. Now, some Israelites likely picked up beliefs and or practices from Egypt during those years. Remember, while they were there, this is what we was talking about before. And when we look at the world and these different gods, we see them till this day. This is what this is about. People keep talking about religion, keep talking about who we serve, what, when, where, and how. And this is what is going on. And these other places serve all these different gods. And whether we know it or not. The gods of the Amorites. These were the Canaan gods. So they're different. Remember, they're not all the same. Now, these guys were the ones in the Promised Land. These were the major ones, which was Baal. B-A-A-L. Storm and fertility god. Why? Because they need the rains, they need the water, fertility to make everything grow, right? Asherah, A-S-H-E-R-A-H, fertility goddess. Now, this is what we see a lot with the bunny and all that. Asherah. Fertility goddess. Then we have Molech. This is associated with the child sacrifice. So remember, abortion, along with this other stuff they have, human trafficking, eating children, all that type of stuff. We're seeing this, so we need to pay attention. These were most immediate temptation because Israel was now living among these people. Now, what was happening? The Israelites were living in the land that God gave them, but they didn't drive these people out. We're going to look. But still being pulled toward other spiritual influence. Why? Because they grew up around this stuff. They grew up around it, so they were so used to it. Then we're going to look into it. So they're still being pulled toward other spiritual influence. Joshua's saying you can't follow God halfway while holding on to other things. When did this take place? Around the end of Joshua's life. This is what it was, depending on his timeline. Between 1400 and 1300 BC, the conquest of Canaan, the land had been divided among the tribes. This is a transitional moment. A new generation is about to live without Joshua's leadership. So now, where did this happen? It was at Shechem. Shechem is important because it's where God first promised the land to Abraham in Genesis 12. So this is why, and it is a place of covenant and decision. Joshua brings them back to the starting place spiritually and factually. So why were they worshiping the other gods? This is what we're looking into. This is the part that connects deeply to what we're talking about. Influence from their past. Why? Because they carried thoughts, habits, cycles, patterns, like we talked, and beliefs from family backgrounds and cultures that they came from, that they were already used to, accustomed to. So just like us, what we grow up and around, it does stick with us. It is not easy to break these things off. Pressure from the environment. They were surrounded by people who, one, worship visible, tangible gods. Two, who had rituals that seemed to work, meaning rain, crops, etc. These gods felt immediate and practical. And this is why a lot of people worship these gods. Why? Because they see results quickly. Impatient and unmet expectations. This is very, very big. And this, yes, God often seems slow, unseen, and or indirect. Other gods promise quick results. Does this sound familiar? This is what we see even to this day. This is where our words connect. We're tired of waiting on promise. If and will it come? It may or may not come. Tension has always been there. This is what happens when we are just waiting on stuff and it hasn't shown up. It's not coming. This is what happens when you're discouraged, disappointed. This is where the dividing by loyalty comes in. They weren't always rejecting God outright. They were trying to keep God and other options. Joshua basically says, pick one and stop living split. This is the lukewarm, situation. Why does this matter? Because Joshua 24 isn't just about ancient idols. It's about what we turn to when we are disappointed and or tired. This makes a lot of sense. This is how people backslide. This is how people turn away. We talk about it. This is the time for it. God is talking about it even to this day about this. Come on now. Why does these lights keep coming out? Hold on. I don't want these lights out. I need the lights on. So anyway, sorry about that. Lights went out. I can't with the lights going out. Okay. So this is what this is about. And then we see it. It makes a lot of sense. So today other guys can look like one, control, trying to force outcomes. People think praying and fasting is going to make God's hand come down and do what they want. That is not so. It can be very disappointing when you're doing all these things thinking that it's going to fix God's outcomes or whatever, or do it, and it doesn't happen like that. And it gets very discouraging. You become angry and bitter and upset with God about these things. Relationships, when folks are praying for husbands and praying for money and praying blessings and all these things, and they do not come, or they don't come when you want, this is where this is. Money, success, security, checking out emotionally, these things. Anything we can lean on because we feel like God isn't coming through, or he isn't coming through fast enough, or the way we want, or how we like it. Real talk for situations, we said we're discouraged, tired of waiting, unsure about the future, unsure about our future. And this is exactly the kind of moment Joshua 24 speaks into. This is what they were going through. But here's the key difference. Joshua isn't saying choose God because everything will go the way you want. He's saying choose who you're going to trust even when life isn't predictable. We were talking about how being married or doing whatever, day-to-day things that are boring. This is what this looks like, because people think when you're saved, when you're going, that life looks wonderful. Oh, people are chosen, they're called, they're doing great and wonderful things all of the time. No. You might see people doing exploits here and there. God will use them, but for the most part, they're at home. It's a regular schmegular life like everybody else. One honest way that we can look at these things is we don't have to force ourselves into blind faith and pretend that everything makes sense. Why? Because this is what this is about. It will be very disappointing. A more real place might be, I don't fully understand my life right now. I'm not deciding what I'll lean on while, right now. I just figured out I'm waiting. Choose this day moment, not pressure, just direction. So what we want to do is go deeper, ask God, what about, life looks like for us. So what these other guys might look like right now in our lives, or how to rebuild faith without ignoring our disappointment. We're going to look at this. What other guys can look like today, how disappointment with God and life actually affects faith, how to rebuild something real without faking it, because this is what we're going through when we sit here. Oh, God is good all the time, when we going through things sometimes, and it's not about, I was talking about Breathe experience and how she's going through some things, and a lot of us too. And when we're going through, we're not always going to be, oh, God is good. Sometimes we're angry, we're upset, we're going through. Yes, and it is natural, to feel these ways. It's not to say that it's, an okay situation, but it is what it is, and we have to be honest with ourselves and with God about it. Back then, it was Baal, Ra, etc. This is what these gods are, still to this day. Now, it's not statues, but it's the function in the same. Meaning, an other god is anything that we lean on for security, identity, control, and hope. So, especially when God feels distance, this could be having sex, this could be smoking weed, this could be partying, this could be success addiction, this could be a workaholism, whatever it is for different people, it's different things. So this is what we turn to. If it's cigarettes, if it's sex, if it's a man, a woman, a companionship, it could be whatever. So we got to be honest with ourselves here. When it comes to control, trying to figure everything out, needing a clear outcome before we feel okay, or if we could just get some type of certainty and be at peace. Also, it is be relationships, people, places, and things. Hoping someone will find what you're missing. Feeling like your future depends on someone showing up. If this works out, then I'll be good. This is type of, the wishful, magical thinking. Escaping, numbing out, distractions, habits, shutting down emotions, just don't want to feel this anymore. And a lot of times we go through that as well, because I find myself going through that from time to time. Then there's the alternative, which is a lot of people have, the depression, They have the actual suicide, homicide, whatever, and I've been through that as well. This is why these things are so important. And when I was talking about Bree, because she was on there talking, going through her stuff, this is where people either decide to check out, whatever. Why? Because they're going through so much. Also, these self-reliance, I'll just handle everything myself. I can't depend on anything or anyone else. None of these make us a bad person, but they usually come from hurt and unmet needs, expectations, whatever it is. This is with discouragement, this is disappointment, this is what that is when you're trying to do stuff. You've been working hard at it, you're not seeing anything, nothing's happening for you. And it's all, if anything, getting worse instead of getting better or staying the same or whatever. So this is what this is about. Now, what disappointment does to faith, this is a part people do not talk enough about. When we've been waiting, hoping, and believing for something that it will happen and it doesn't or hasn't yet, it creates a quiet internal shift. Yes, it does. It turns into thoughts like, maybe this isn't real. Maybe I got it wrong. Maybe I shouldn't expect anything. And eventually we get tired of hoping, and that's where we are when it comes to certain things at certain times, and our faith gets challenged. This is how. Important truth that is not sugar-coated. Faith gets shaken most when what we expected God to do, or what actually happened, either did or didn't. And the gap that creates what? Disappointment, confusion, and distance. Even if we still want to believe, a lot of times it's hard for us too. Now, he says you have faith the size of a mustard seed sometimes, y'all, I'm telling you. But my life is going haywire, which most of the time it is, and I be wondering why. Because I say to myself, why does it have to always be so hard for me? And I be wondering why. And I say to myself, I just don't be understanding sometimes. If it ain't the kids, it's the bills. If it ain't the bills, it's this. And I'm like, well, what is going on? And I be so sick and so tired at times of this. But this is what happens. So some people, this is what their lives are. We discussed this before. So rebuilding something real without faking it, having a side, even if it's just the mustard seed, saying, well, Lord, I know this ain't what I like or want right now. Help me, show me, what it is you want me to do. And also help my faith to build and hope in you, because this is all we can do. Why? Because this is where we are. And whether you give it to me or do what I want you to do, need what I, give me what I need or what, the way I want to or not, if it's a waiting, a yes, no, maybe, help me to be okay with it. This is where we got to get, because we never know which way it's going to go. And that's why that you get a blessing, you work fast and work and pay or praise and worship, and your efforts and it not happening, that is very dangerous, because it's not what our works, meaning how wonderful religious we are, how much we pray and fast, that God is going to bless us. Because you can pray and fast forever. If it's not time, if it's not your time, you're not going to get it. And a lot of times we try to do these things to make outcomes. They talk about these different type of fasts, to see the hand of God, to do all this. And sometimes you can do those things, but God's hand will not move, or it won't move, because he's on his own time, and he's going to do it when he's ready to do it. So please be mindful and know for these things. Instead, we think of this as a reset, not a failure. So what happens is, we're building something real without faking it. We don't need to force ourselves to feel strong, to pretend that we're confident, or to snap back into belief. Instead, think of this as a real reset and not a failure. Sometimes we have to just go rest and go relax and do something different. Like, myself, I find myself from time to time when I'm just leave it alone, step away from it. Let it all, whatever it's doing, and just go do something else. You got to take your mind off stuff. And I tell people, this is the time when you have to rest. Instead of falling and bending and breaking, we rest. So that we don't, bend or whatever. Well, break. We bend. So, one, separate God from expectation. This is huge. We ask ourselves, what exactly did I expect to happen? Be specific. Whether it was a relationship, a breakthrough, a certain timeline, feeling different by now about it. Then ask God, did God clearly promise this, or did I believe it would happen? There's no shame in that. Just, clarifying, because sometimes we think God's going to give us things that maybe he never told us he was going to give us. We have to sit down and really think, is it just something we wanted and he never said specifically we would have it? What does that look like? What is that about? Step 2, allow honest disappointment. We're allowed to feel hurt, be confused, even a little distant. We don't need to dress it up. A real prayer could literally be, I'm disappointed. I thought my life would be different by now. That's real faith. It's not fake positivity, because this is what we do a lot of times. People throw a bunch of stuff and, and it's not. Step 3, redefine what staying means. Right now, choosing God doesn't have to mean strong belief, clear direction, emotional certainty. It might just mean I'm not walking away completely, even though I don't understand or know which way to go or what to do, and that can count. Step 4, focus on things smaller than my future. Our mind is overwhelmed because we're holding one, past pain, present frustration, and future fear. This can be a real thing here. And this is a lot of times it is too much at once. Shrink it down. What do I need to get through this week, this day, mentally, emotionally, physically, financially, spiritually, not my whole life, just in a small window. This is where we got to break that down. We got to let some of that just, that day by day thing sometimes. Just one day at a time. Step 5, watch for quiet shifts, not big answers. Most people expect clarity, breakthroughs, and obvious change, but often what actually happens is we gain a little more stability, a little more clarity over time, and a little less heaviness. Not to be dramatic, but just to be real. Let's bring it back. We're not just questioning faith. We're just tired of waiting. We're carrying disappointments. We're unsure what we hope for will happen, and this is deeper than a belief issue. It's an emotional and a lived experience. We're going to get into the main things that we're hoping for that hasn't happened. What is it? Is it relationship? Is it stability? Is it direction? Is it something else? The answer will help us. We have to ask these questions, get more specific, and actually work through our situation, not just general advice. And so once we do that, we can, but because they were going through all of this, this is how they turn back or backslid, turn into these gods again. And even in our own lives as people, we see it ourselves in our walk, stumble, backslide, whatever. This is what this is about. Now, this is a list of the 2,000. There's over way more than this, but list of 2,000 gods and goddesses and their functions and pictures. We're going to get into this. I want to go into this Google thing because they have all, it's over. I mean, when I tell you there's so many Egyptian gods and their photos and different things and their functions until it's ridiculous. I just want to show a few if I can, because these are some of them that we've already seen. And hold on, let me see, where's the, so I'm gonna let you see this real quick because I don't want to, and that's, you know, a family of the Egyptian pictures gods and their family tree. We have seen these before. It is not the first time we have seen these things. So, you know, when we are talking about all of this stuff, if you could see it, it is a lot with this. I can't get into all of it. That's why I'm showing you. I wouldn't have enough time to do so. But I'm going to get into some of it with us so we can just kind of pay attention and know, you know, what it looks like and what it is all about. So I'm going to go back. And I'm going to go to, in particularly, the ones that they were dealing with at this time. During this time in, what was it during the time? So, okay. So what it says is there's no single list of the exact amount because there's thousands of ancient religions and gods, especially depending on where you are in the world. So there's not a complete list of them all. I tried looking for it. It's not. But we have 2,000 of this kind, 10,000 of that kind, depending on your region. There's thousands of gods. Greek mythology alone mentions over 3,000 deities. So, you know, Mesopotamians believed in 3,000 plus gods. Across all cultures, historians estimate over 18,000 to 20,000 gods. So even a full list of 2,000 gods with images is too big for one setting. So what we're going to do is break down a little bit of what, you know, the ones. So now the major ancient gods, meaning and their functions, these are the Greek ones. These are the most famous ones that people mostly know about already. These are the Greek ones. The key gods was Zeus, remember, king of the gods, the sky, lightning, Hera, marriage and family, Poseidon, sea, earthquakes, Hades, the underworld, Athena, wisdom, strategy, Ares, war, violence, Apollo, sun, music, healing, Artemis, hunting, wilderness, Aphrodite, love, beauty, Hermes, messenger, travel, Demeter, agriculture, and Hesphaestus, fire and craftsmanship. So these is what they represented. So this is what they were, being worshipped for. Then we have the Egyptian gods. The examples are Ra, R-A, sun god, most important. Osiris, death and afterlife. Horus, which is kingship and protection. Isis, magic and motherhood. Anubis, mummification of the dead. Set, S-E-T, chaos, desert. Thoth, T-H-O-T-H, wisdom in writing. Egyptians believe each god controlled parts of nature and life, like the Nile, the sun, and death, etc. And this is why God gave the plagues, and it was basically set for the opposition of those gods, to show that those gods weren't doing who or what they said they are, and that He is the one and only true God. So by destroying them and what they represented. Remember, Ra was the main one, because that's what Pharaoh, I believe his kingdom, everything about him was Ra. And when we look further on, when we talk about how they mummified and all of that, King Tut and all of them, this is where all of this come from. Mesopotamian gods, very important for Bible context, these examples and images. Anu, A-N-U, sky supreme god. Enlil, E-N-L-I-L, wind and authority. Enki, E-N-K-I-E-A, wisdom and water. Ishtar, Inanna, love and war. Shamash, sun and justice. Nergal, death and plague. Marduk, chief god of Babylon. So remember, these were the ones that they were around at this time, and because they had been around the different ones and this was a part of them, they grew up with this. We see other people, other cultures doing the same thing, and they say the same thing. Simple way to understand all the gods is, across cultures, most gods fall into these categories. One, nature gods, meaning sun, moon, rain, and wind, and sea. Why? Because these are the elements. If they're not elements, they're manipulants. Because sun, the moon, the rain, the wind, the sea. Yeah. And so this is what that's about. Then you have power and survival, war, protection, kingship. A lot of them had gods that pertain to that. Then you have human life, love, fertility, family. Then we have the death and beyond, meaning the afterlife, judgment, spirits. This is where the what they call about the reincarnation and all of that comes in. That I don't know why this like keeps going out on me. And so when we're seeing, these guys, this is what they represent. This is what this is about. Now, why this matters connecting to what's going on. Remember earlier in, Joshua 24, we were talking about the exact kind of gods that the people were tempted by. Meaning the gods of rain for crops to bring food. So when we think about food, clothing, shelter, and what's going on in the world today, and who they're worshiping, what they're worshiping, why, and we see human trafficking, and we see the eating of children, and we see them trying to feed us human beings and all these different things. This is what they worship. We got to pay attention. Gods of rain for crops, gods of love for relationships, gods of power for security. They were very practical and immediate, not invisible and a wait on God type of people. And that's why people struggle. Why? Because do we trust God or something that feels more immediate? That tension is still real today, and it just looks different. This is why people sell their souls and have no problem. Because the instant situation of getting money, getting fame, getting food, being able to come out of situations that they are in or have been living in, it is so tempting when you're at your lowest. And this is when these things happen, for someone to come along and bring you, all of this only if you sell your soul. Why? Because you're going through so much at that time. And this is why normally what happens, because the manipulation, the lies, the cheating, of them coming to you at a vulnerable state, for you to do something that you wouldn't normally do, but out of desperation. This is what happens to people, because they just want to live their life and be here. But when things are not going exactly the way that they need or want them to, this becomes, what they do. So we kind of understand what's going on and why it's happening. So we have 100 Greek gods with functions and images. We have 100 Egyptian gods, 100 Mesopotamian gods, and even comparing them to what the Bible talks about. So I have them here. It's a lot. It is just a lot between the photos. I'm going to get through some of it. I'm not going to be able to get through it all. Then I asked, why didn't they completely wipe out the Canaanites, etc., take full possession of the land? This is a really good, important, and honest question. A lot of people read Joshua, Judges, and the whole wonder the same thing. We're going to walk through this history, human behavior, and our earlier struggle with faith. The short answer is they didn't fully wipe out and or take possession of the land because they didn't fully obey. They became afraid and compromised. They started adopting the cultures around them, meaning instead of fighting them, they joined them. They're saying, you can't beat them, join them. I guess this is what they were doing. Let's break it down step by step. God told them to drive out the nations completely. Before Joshua 24, God had already given a clear instruction: remove the Canaanites, don't mix with their practices, and don't worship their gods. This is what that choose ye this day about. Not because of hatred, but because those cultures were deeply tied to one, idolatry, extreme practices of like child sacrifices, etc., and moral corruption. This is how you can starve people to death. This is how you can have everything enslaved and starve and kill and oppress and all of these things. And when we look at the world and have no regards for life and respect for it, for how people live and if they live or die or not, and this is what this is about: your greed and your wickedness. You can have it all and still want to create like what they're doing now. They're creating laws to basically impoverish, to exploit, to have people homeless without jobs and on the street. That is utter, when they have everything that they need and want. So why would it's not disrupting their life for people to eat. It's not disrupting their lives. So why would you want to just go and raise the price of gas? They said from the regular price, they wanted everyone to pay premium when people could barely afford gas, barely afford food, barely afford anything now. But why would you do these type of things? And see, these were the same type of things that went on in Egypt. Why? Because this is taskmaster all over again. Why? This is slave ship, taskmaster. Why? Because they're telling you to make bricks with no straw, no mortar, but they still want you to so-called. Why? Because this is a way of torturing you mentally, emotionally, physically, financially, and spiritually. This is what this is about, and this is what all of this looks like. We was talking about this before in the last couple of chapters. It makes a lot of sense how you can have a 40-hour work week where you can't do nothing but work for companies. The heck with your health, your kids, where they have policy procedure where you see what I'm saying, it's not family friendly. All of these type of things, when you look, it's bondage. It's bondage. So I get why people want to be able to come out of bondage and have some relief and have some type of happiness or some type of something, and not just be here and surviving all of the time, but have the littlest piece of, I guess for some people it's eating, some people it's smoking weed, having sex. This is what this is about. So, but Israel didn't finish the job. So when we get to the next in Judges, we're going to talk more about it. It says they did not drive out the people. It said instead they left some nations in place. They made peace with and or forced labor instead of removing them, and they settled among them. So they partially obeyed but not fully. Why didn't they finish? Fear and practical limits. Some enemies were stronger than them, and the other ones had advanced weapons, meaning iron chariots. So the people thought, this is too hard, we'll just live with them. And this is what happens: compromise, tolerance of stuff that you wouldn't tolerate, but sometimes you have to tolerate in order to move forward in life until you can do better. And this is what this is, and this is what this looks like. Be comfort and compromise. Instead of finishing the mission, they made deals. They took the easier route, the complacency, good enough, replace full obedience with that. So this is what this is. I mean, and sometimes it's like this. Hey, another thing is influence of culture. The biggest issue: they didn't just live near the Canaanites, they slowly became like them. This was another thing: intermarriage, adopting customs that shouldn't have been, and worshiping their gods. Meaning, just like we see certain things going on now, when you meet people and you're not part of a certain religion, but you get with them, you fall in love, you want to be with them, so you adopt their religion, you start to practicing their customs. This is the same thing. And this is what happened. But what happened because of that is that this is where it gets real. The Bible says those nations became a snare to them, meaning they kept pulling Israel away from God, and they caused cycles of success, compromise, spiritual decline, and suffering. This repeats over and over again in Judges. So the deeper meaning that how it connects us is this story isn't just history, it's a pattern. This issue wasn't just they didn't conquer the land. The issue was they didn't fully let go of what was pulling them away. Think of it like this in modern translation: the Canaanites equal things that compete for your trust and your direction and affection, whether it be fear, control, your habits, your influence, your expectations. So Israel tried to follow God, but they kept some of these things too. That split life, it doesn't work. You always love one more than the other. Why this matters for us in our situations, as we said, when we get tired, disappointed, when we're unsure if promises that were made or we thought were made will come through or not. This is exactly the kind of moments where people start to compromise internally, not in a dramatic way, but subtly saying, let me stop expecting anything. Let me rely on something else instead. Let me protect myself from discouragement and disappointment. That's the modern version of leaving the Canaanites in the land. This is how this happens. So we can kind of understand. We're getting into it. We're being honest. Now, the one honest truth right now, we're going to not be, we're going to be very transparent. Israel's issue wasn't lack of evidence or lack of miracles. It was a lack that they got tired of trusting fully. And that's where, being in certain situations can have us when we've been in droughts for so long, gone through so many battles or whatever. This is what happens at times when we get tired and we're out from it. There's an important difference. You're not pretending everything is fine. We're actually asking questions and asking God, what's going on. People say don't question God. We have to sometimes. This is what having a relationship is all about. Why? Because we need to have answers and know and understand. And we need to know from Him. So Joshua 24, it says choose who you'll serve, and Judges is the part where it says it equals what happens when you try to split that choice. We don't need to figure out our whole life and future right in this 1 minute, but this is a powerful question to sit with. What am I holding on to because I'm tired and disappointed of what's going on in my life? When we look into these things, it makes a lot of sense. Now, why did God command this in the first place? This is the reason, both for the brothers and the people, to wipe them all out. Historically, spiritual reasons, extreme corruption in those cultures. The Canaanite societies weren't just different religions. What they were known for things like, one was child sacrifice to the gods like Molech, ritual sexual practices tied to worship. That was that homosexuality, those orgies. We see it, violence tied to religion. We see that now. Remember, ritual sexual stuff also can be, the sex trafficking, the sadomasochism, the sacrifice, all of that type of stuff. So, and we see that even still to this day. The idea was that the society had become deeply destructive and corrupt, and we see that. Long patience before judgment. In Genesis, God says something important. The sin is not yet complete, meaning God allowed hundreds of years before judgment. This wasn't immediate and or random. It was portrayed and or as delayed justice, not sudden cruelty, giving them time to repent and change. Protection of Israel's identity. Israel was meant to be different, set apart, and not shaped by surrounding practices. Why? Because those same practices will pull them away spiritually from God. The importance and know is, in honesty, is this is still a difficult topic, even for believers to this day. There are different ways that people understand this. Some of us see it as historical judgment in a specific time. Others wrestle with it deeply and don't have any easy answers. We are allowed to feel uncomfortable with this. That doesn't make us wrong. This is where, we have to come to God. Why didn't Israel fully do it? Now, this is our question. The Bible is very clear. They didn't finish because of one, fear. Some enemies were stronger. They were better equipped, and so instead of finishing, they thought this is too much. It was too hard. Be partial obedience. They obeyed, but they're only halfway. They took some of the cities, they left others, and they tolerated the people instead of removing them. Almost became their pattern. And we see that. You almost got there. You didn't finish, or you did some of it. You didn't do it all. This is how. Convenience. Instead of removing the people, they made them laborers. They coexisted. It was easier than continuing the struggle of fighting the battle, Remember, even in battle, people are dying. People are getting sick, on both sides. D, influence over time. This is the biggest one. They didn't just let the people stay. They slowly adopted their ways. This was a problem. Relationships, culture, and worship practices. Because remember, they weren't supposed to marry. They weren't supposed to all that. They started marrying into these bloodlines and doing these things. And that taints the bloodline because it allows that stuff to continue on. Why? This is what this is about. So what happened because of that? The book of Judges shows that the results of 1, repeating cycles. 1, follow God. 2, get comfortable. 3, drift into other influences. 4, suffer consequences. 5, cry out. 6, start over again. Over and over again. This is what their repeating cycle was. They would follow God. They would get comfortable. Then they would drift into the other influences. Then they would suffer the consequences. They would cry out and then start over because God, deliver them. This is what, and when we look at our lives, this is what we do. The real issue wasn't military. It wasn't strength. It wasn't numbers. It was ability. It wasn't ability. It was loyalty and trust over time. The deeper meaning here is this is where it hits closer to home. This story is not just about ancient war. It's about something deeper. What we will allow to be in our life will stay in our life. And when we get tired, we'll remove it. So Israel didn't wake up one day and reject God. It happened gradually. They got tired, they got compromised and comfortable, and they stopped pushing forward. So this is what happens to us when we get complacent. Now, we're going to connect this. When we're tired of waiting, we're disappointed, unsure about our future. This very important thing, because the exact state is this, where the people were then is now. Lower expectations. They wanted to protect themselves, and they stopped fully trusting in God. Modern version of not removing the Canaanites is that, and also not literal people in place of things. It's exactly holding on to control instead of trusting, shutting down hope, leaning on something else for stability, and emotionally checking out. Not rebellion, just weariness. So let's be real for a second. We're not struggling because we're weak. We don't believe enough. We're struggling because we've been hoping and it hasn't turned out, or it hasn't turned how we expected. And that changes how we see things. It changes how we see God, ourselves, and our future. So remember that. It's where the discouragement and disappointment come in. The uncomfortable but freeing truth is Israel expected quick victories, clear outcomes. This is what we look for. But life turned out slower, harder, and more uncertain. And that gap led to compromise, meaning of all of that happening. So now we're standing in some kind of gap, what we hope for versus what we're expecting or experiencing. So where do we go from here? What are we doing? Not a religious answer. It's just not option 1. We can shut that expectation completely. I won't expect anything anymore. This feels safer, but it leads to emptiness. 2, we can force blind belief, which pretend everything is fine. Ignore our frustration. That doesn't last either. Option 3 is the healthiest but the hardest. Stay honest and stay open. And just like I know I'm disappointed, I don't understand, but I'm not completely closed off. It's not being fake, it's being real, and it's communicating, keeping the lines open. Final thought is important. Joshua 24 chooses who you will serve. Judges says what happens when you slowly drift. So we're not at the end of the story. We're just in the middle of this tension with them, and honestly, we're just looking at it. So the fact that we're questioning, and they were probably questioning these things too, before were drifting, actually means we're paying attention, and so were they at that time. Now my question was, why would God allow this? We're not wrong for struggling with this. The tension, God's supposed to be good, meaning, and the command, destruction and judgment, that feels like contradiction. A balanced, honest way that people understand is, instead of oversimplifying, here are main ways to approach it. 1, judgment on extreme corruption. Those societies have practiced like child sacrifice and ritual violence. The idea evil had reached its point of serious damage to humanity. Not random violence, but targeted. This is targeted judgment. A specific moment in history is not ongoing. This wasn't a forever command. It happened in a unique period of Israel's history. It's not a general pattern for all time. Protection against influence. God knew if you leave them, they will influence you, not just in belief, but in behavior and identity. But here's the simple part. Even after all that, it feels heavy, and that's okay. Faith is not pretending everything makes sense. It's being able to say, I don't fully understand this, and I'm thinking it, asking God to help me think it through. Part 2, why Israel didn't finish is, this is the part that actually is career more reliable. Bottom line, they didn't fail because they couldn't. They failed because they got tired, they got afraid, and they settled halfway. And this is how sometimes we settle for things. We place the things that happen. The real reason breakdown, fear. They saw strong cities, advanced weapons. This is too much. 2, they were weary. They were tired. Weariness, they had been fighting, pushing, struggling for years, waiting, hoping, praying. Eventually, let's just stop here. That's what they said. Compromise. Instead of removing them, they made deals with them. They forced labor, and they coexisted. They said this is good enough. We'll replace this with this, and they distorted the full commitment. They didn't do it. They replaced it with the full commitment. Influence, the biggest consequence. They didn't stay neutral. They began to adopt beliefs, mix lifestyles, and slowly drift onto that side. Part 3, the real problem, it wasn't about the land. It was about what they allowed to remain inside of their lives. Part 4, when it comes to the heart, this is where it connects to us. When we say we're tired of waiting, we're discouraged, we're disappointed, unsure about the future, this is not just a belief of struggle, it's an emotional exhaustion, meaning unanswered expectation. This is where it is. Here's the deep connection. Israel didn't just obey, they got into a place like, we've trusted, we fought, we waited, and why is this still hard? And slowly their effort dropped and stopped, the trust weakened, and the compromise crept in. We look at that, we see that in our own lives. Modern version, real talk about it, nobody today is dealing with literal nations, but the pattern is the same. The Canaanites today can look like lowering your expectations to avoid disappointment, relying on our own selves, emotionally disconnecting, and losing hope quietly. What we're feeling is not rebellion, it's closer to fatigue and disappointment. Part 5, what's really going on inside of us? Let us say this directly because it matters. We're not just questioning faith. We're asking, can I trust what I hope for? Was I wrong? What if nothing changes? And this hits differently. It's identity, it's not just belief. Part 6, the gap is this is the core issue, what we expected versus what life actually looked like. That gap is where one doubt grows, disappointment sit, and faith feels shaky. Part 7, what we can do realistically, not preachy. We're not doing fake motivation, just grounded steps. 1, be honest about what didn't happen. Don't generalize. Be specific. What were we expecting? What didn't work out? Clarity reduces confusion. 2, let disappointment exist without guilt. We can say, I'm disappointed. I thought things would be different. This is not failure. This is honesty. Stop trying to solve our whole future, especially one day. Right now, our brain is trying to process one, past, present, and future. That's overload. So we need to shrink that down into what do I need to get through this day, this week, this time. 4, redefine faith for now. Not certainty, but not perfect belief, but not completely shutting down. So even if it's just, I don't know, but I'm just not there yet. I don't know. 5, watch for subtle shifts, not big breakthroughs. Growth sometimes look like slightly less anxious, slightly more stable, and slightly clearer. Not dramatic, but it's real. Part 8, the real truth, no filter. We're in a place where a lot of people reach, but don't talk about the middle. Meaning not strong, not total rejection, but questioning, tired, and still thinking. Final thought, Joshua 24, choose who you will serve. Judges points to what happens when people get tired and settle halfway. But us, we're not settling quietly. We're going to actually face it directly. And this matters more than we think. So let's keep this real. We can ask what was the one thing that we were hoping for that hasn't happened, and how we can work through it specifically together, whether it happens or not. I'm getting sleepy. I apologize. But, hold on. I'm going to get into this next, but I think this one is kind of long. It was how can I stop compromising and how to rebuild faith after disappointment and how does it mean to stay open. I'll probably end up doing those next go round. This video is very, very long and I didn't mean for it to be this long, but I was trying to cover all of the information I could possibly fit in this. So bear with me, and I hope that it was a blessing for you. But like, share, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Let's be a blessing to one another as best we can. Whether it's liking, sharing, commenting, subscribing, giving encouraging words, actually, donating money, help, whatever it is, to whatever it is that's going on. Being a help to one another, aiding, assisting each other, not leaving each other just sitting out there. And that can be a blessing. But in Jesus' name, like I said, I'm here trying to get through this. I myself am sleepy and been dealing with a lot myself. And between work and it just be tiring sometimes. I be trying to look up as much stuff to give people as much information because I'm nosy and I want it myself. But here we are, and this is what it was. This is what was going on at this time. This is what they had going on. And it was just a quick interlude, to look at the gods, the goddesses, whatever. Hold on, I'm going to show pictures if there's any more. Is there more of them? I want to see. Also, another thing, when we look up the flags all around the world, we see the symbols of them. The flags have a lot to do with stuff too. You can tell what's going on in each region and territory based off of those flags, because those flags that stand, tall in each country all over the world will let us know also, because those flags are very much so symbolisms. And we can see, the different ounce, whatever, in the flags. And it lets us know, excuse me, I am so sorry, about, who these people serve in those regions, basically. But like I said, this video is entirely too long. I hope you guys will go through it in its entirety. I do put a lot of work. It is a lot of research. I have to look up stuff and write down stuff and look up more stuff. So it's not just simple and easy for me to do these. And I do like to get the information out for people who do not know and understand so that they can. So like, share, comment, subscribe to the channel. You can, I think in my bio, I have the Cash App link if you want to be a blessing to me and my family. But God is my provider. We are bruised and not broken, and I hope that this word was a blessing to you guys. It was a blessing to me to get to know, what that I'm learning as I'm learning it. So, with that being said, bruised and not broken, in Jesus' name be blessed. Amen.